Hi, I'm Mike Morales, and I'm sitting here with Steve Reynolds. This is a very special edition of Open Bar because we don't go on remote very often, but we do go on assignment, and we are in the beautiful town of Tequila, where Steve, who is one of the main owners of Penta Tequila, and he's been hosting us for this 3-day exclusive junket excursion. It's been a journey, Steve.
It has been a journey.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in the back of the luxury van that you may or may not have seen, and there was a lot of confession time back there. But I first of all, I want to thank you for having myself and Alex of Tequila Aficionado here with you to celebrate something very special. You spearheaded an effort to have a Blanco expression, which I'd forgotten that you didn't come up with. And was there a reason why you started with the expressions you started with and then reversed and got the Blanco later?
Well, this project, has been sort of a passion project for me, as we've discussed.
Right.
It's we're all tequila fans, right?
Yep.
And we all get the bug somewhere along the way.
Yep.
And then, there was a point I just felt like you kind of want to participate a little bit more and dive in. And so for me, came down and decided, okay, let's give this thing a go. And at that time, Cristalinos were becoming kind of popular.
Right.
Really weren't very well known. And you still, every single time somebody would pick up, the Diamante, they'd go, oh, Blanco. And they go, okay, I've told you 20 times it's not a Blanco, but they just didn't know then. So we just gave in and let it happen. We decided, okay, we're only gonna make 3 tequilas to start, a clear, Repo,
right,
Añejo. Let's start there. And because we figured people would taste it and go, this is the best damn clear tequila I've ever had. And it also gave you the opportunity to educate them, right? Gave you a chance to have a conversation about it. And some of the things we were doing were a little unique and different. And again, trying to open that door for conversation.
Right. Now tell everybody about your background. For those of you who don't know Steve Reynolds, and quickly, if you could briefly give us your biography on where you came from in
the confused path I've had.
Yeah. How did an ex-dentist get into wine, get into tequila, and you explained it perfectly to us in the back of that van. So,
well, I did the dental school thing, got a chemistry degree, went to dental school candidly, probably to make my parents proud, to be the first doctor in the family. Mm-hmm. I kind of knew right away maybe it wasn't my thing. And I grew up in Germany, and my dad was a big wine guy. And so I grew up in a house of collecting wines, tasting wines, traveling to wine regions, etc. And we had some family friends that were in the business. So after several years of being a dentist, when I got engaged, I told my fiance, hey, there's a chance I may have a midlife crisis a little early. And so she said, before we have kids, if there's something you need to get out of you, let's do it. So literally within a year or so, I sold my dental practice. We moved into my hygienist garage, bought a rundown chicken farm in Napa, and built a little small family-owned winery, which we still have. But how this links to tequila is the first time I got out to publicly speak about our wines. I literally was super nervous to speak. I didn't know how I would do publicly. As a dentist, you speak one-on-one, it's pretty easy.
Right.
Now you're in a room of 30, 40, whatever that might be. So I jokingly told my guys in the cellar, which of course are all from Mexico, that have taught me so much. I said, hey, I'm a little nervous. And one of my guys said, Steve, drink some tequila. You'll speak really well.
And so that's the story.
That's the story. So I went and I hedged my bet. I went to the bar, did a little tequila shot, or sipped a little tequila. And I told the bartender when I was standing up, I said, can you bring in 36 shots of tequila? Light chill on them, just because it's helps some of the people that aren't, just helps particularly some of the women. And it was the timing of it that right when I dinged the glass to get up and speak, the guy came in and burst the door open with this tray of tequila shots. And I said, this is for the true winemakers of California that are not here today. All my guys from Mexico that never get credit, that never get any distinction. And so that little toast stuck for all of these 25, 26 years. And then probably about 11, almost 12 years ago, I decided I needed to know this stuff because everyone was asking me about tequilas. It was getting more popular, and I felt like a fake. I didn't know it as well. I loved it. I drank it. I didn't know it. So I came down for almost 2 years doing my walkabout, if you will. Immersed myself in all things tequila to try to educate myself the best I could, and fell so in love with it that I had to dive in. I had to kind of see if some of the winemaking things that I had learned could do anything, if I could, to contribute to tequila.
And it has. We were fortunate enough to visit the distillery, the factory where you make yours. It's the proper name is Destilería
De Arandas.
De Arandas, that's it. And for those of us who know the Nom and know that distillery, it had a very good reputation as being a small but mighty. The one distiller said to me, it's a chef's favorite kitchen because it's got the versatility.
It sure does.
And now, having visited that distillery yesterday, that facility, and we have photos that we'll share online and later on in our articles, that the facility has really increased. I mean, it's a very impressive, I would say, when there's a description of small to mid-sized distilleries, that falls into that
Sure.
category, where it's not so small, but it's really good mid-sized. And in my opinion, it shouldn't even go any bigger than that.
No, I think it's perfect.
Yeah,
the changes in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, put it this way: we were extremely frustrated. Not always a lot of information coming out, but yeah, things were delayed. We couldn't process. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do this. But they were always doing construction. And now that we've landed and seen where this has gone, with now the option of using brick clay ovens versus autoclaves versus, so now as a producer or somebody that's into it, you have these options of either doing a technique or mixing techniques and layering characters, because that's really what this fun thing's all about.
Well, and that's what you're doing with your wine barrels. I mean, if you can, I don't want you to give away proprietary information, but I know that the master distiller is the company that's in charge of you working together as Casa Aceves, and I had a chance to meet Jose Aceves. That we communicated off and on online for a while, but we didn't really meet in person until we were involved in another project, and we met in Israel.
All right.
And so we spent about 7 days together, and I got to know him very, very well. And unbeknownst to me, we wound up being invited to this particular project, the rollout for your Blanco tequila, and it happens that Casa Aceves was also there, and we got to meet your master distiller, which is his brother Alvaro.
Absolutely.
And Alvaro, it's interesting because Alvaro doesn't speak as much English as Jose does, but listening to him describe the passion and the stuff that you're doing with the layering and the barrels and that stuff. Tell people, are you using your own Napa barrels or your own wine barrels for your projects with Penta?
Yeah, so as I came down here and started watching, I went to so many distilleries, and as we all know, it's a very proud culture down here.
Yeah.
And I'm a gringo, I get it, and it was a little courting that occurred. Nobody wanted, a guy from Napa to come down and tell them what to do, but making tequila does involve fermentation, and that's kind of my jam, right? And I know a little bit about it, so I'm watching these techniques and I'm asking questions, and it was, for example, yeast. We were the first guys to start making tequila with fermenting on champagne yeast. Brought a guy over from France, and oh my God, that was a major breakthrough. We started adding better nutrients. We started controlling our fermentation temperature. We started doing a lot of great things that were just, to me, in the wine industry, were pretty basic, but they just were being overlooked down here. And then beyond that, when I started to get to the finishing side of this, of course, you have to go through the double, triple, quadruple distillation. You got to taste the difference, learn the difference, different stills. There's so many things we could go on about.
Copper versus stainless steel.
Several years.
We did nerd out in the back of the bus. We were to the we call it bus. It was a nice luxury van, but the three of us and Alex in between us, and we shared a lot and just nerding out on,
which was fantastic,
on stuff, and then to see.
It's good to have fellow brother nerds that like to talk deep.
but the other thing is that you came from that other, another segment of the wine and spirits industry that you don't see very often. You're beginning to see it now a lot more. There's a few brands out there that are using really neat, doing stuff with wine barrels.
Well, here's the thing, with wine barrels. Now, I'll tell you, Ron Cooper from Del Maguey.
Right.
Years ago, we were pretty good friends, and we hung out in Aspen at the Aspen Food and Wine, and we one night, of course, drinking together. And
right.
He was one of the cool cats that showed up to one of my wine dinners and said, "Can I give the toast with my mezcals instead of you doing your thing? Can I get up with you?" And I went, God, how cool is that, right? So we bonded really heavily, and he started talking and said, "Hey, why don't you ship down some wine barrels and let's make the first single village mezcal with barrels.
Yeah.
In fact, let's do red. Let's make the first rosé mezcal from one of my villages," which we did. It only sold in New York. So I feel like this wine barrel tequila thing, that was 14, 16 years ago, that we dove into that pool pretty early, right?
Ron has always been an innovator.
Oh, and he's such a great guy. And so we, that started that. But when we started this project, one of the things that drove me the hardest was discussing wood profiles. Because, working with Alvaro and Ana Maria, I asked, "What's your favorite wood? What do you like to work with in aging your tequilas?" And they both said, "Well, American oak." And I said, "Okay, well, as a winemaker, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Missouri, where are you getting your wood?" And they're like, "No, use whiskey bourbon barrels." And I'm like, "You mean you guys have never done wood profiles in making tequila? The difference between various forests of France, Hungary, these are all things that we nerd out on in wine, and they do make a difference." Now, I'm not saying that they're earth-shattering, but they're subtle. But I always say, here's how I equate all these little things I'm describing. One piece of paper doesn't matter, but when you stack 20 on top of each other, people notice that little pile of paper. Yeah. So it's these tiny little details that I think that we have done. So Penta, as we know, is 5. So we were the first guys, first of all, to source our fruit from all of the different 5 denominations of Mexico. Mm-hmm. We all know that high 90% comes from Jalisco, where we are today. Right. And of course, candidly, particularly the highlands, have some of the sweetest fruit. So it's the backbone of our tequila. But just like the 5 noble grapes from France, right? The French have taught us before Christ the blending arts of 5 things. So for thousands of years, this idea of blending 5 things together to intrigue us has been around forever. And so it just was sort of like, okay, here's my link to being a winemaker and what I might be able to bring down and try in Mexico. And I will say this kind of started out to be a garage band thing with 4 of my buddies. So there are 5 of us, 5 partners at Penta, and this was a fireside conversation one night, and started out with a little bit of money, and now we're several years deep into this and enjoying every bit of it.
Yeah, and it's just, folks, if you've not had the product, it's stellar. We did do the review of the existing expressions. And I can't wait to dive into that Blanco. And I want to thank you for letting us in on this. This is literally the rollout. This is what we're just now. I guess Joe Pack and one of your representatives here is standing off camera, and I know it's just now. It just left. The truck left and headed to the border.
We were actually at the distillery, and they're putting the labels on.
Yeah.
I got to see it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like seeing your kid go off to school for the first day. Yep. It was pretty damn cool.
And it is. This is only my second time of actually being exposed to watching a dream come to fruition.
Right.
Because that's basically it. And watching somebody's 2 years of hard work, or however long it took to pin down that Blanco the way you wanted it, and then seeing it getting packaged and bottled, and that's a pretty big bottling. That was a lot.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was pretty, because our shape of our bottle is 5-sided, of course. We went all the way, right? Everything's about the 5, and I think the packaging is magnificent. And candidly, we were going to use a California US company to do the design. We came down here on one trip and went out to dinner, and Jose said, "Hey, I've got these guys are really great designers. Can they just pitch you?" And I said, "Sure." I was hooked the minute I met them. They were.
The packaging
is a little scary, I'll be honest, because they came in and we were kind of let's just say countryside little restaurant, and these guys came in kind of pretty heavily tatted, long hair, and I was like, okay. But you know,
but they're really
creative. So I misjudged, and they were so fantastic. You know, I thought, okay, am I on the bad side here? Am I going to get in trouble? But it all worked out great, and we've used them for many, many things. And you know, I think the last thing, you know, or if we're going to keep going on, but I did want to just say, like on this Blanco, one of the things that I feel also that we've contributed a little bit is just changes in things like micro-oxygenation and various little techniques that we do use in wine, and I know they're being used in spirits as well. But that was a big breakthrough, I think, for us with the Aceves team as well. And I think it's really made a very smooth, beautifully expressed Blanco.
There's so much going on in that distillery, and I can tell you firsthand, having spoken to the Aceves brothers and walking through the facility for the first time, I'd never seen it. It's so creative, and yet everything is based in science, and that's what I love, because as we talked and confessed in the back of the confessional there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the industry right now, and there's a lot of fake flavor profiles and a lot of the same profile out in the market with just another label on it, and that's not how it is with Casa Aceves, and they refuse to do it that way, and which is, you know, I can imagine that once maybe the facility wasn't to your liking at the time, but the fact that you guys all kind of chose each other to go into that project
as a team. You know, I think they were young. They only had a couple products they were doing.
Right.
And then here I come along, and you know, and so many of the other distilleries that I'd interviewed and worked, kind of talked with, you know, everything was, no, it's not a problem. We'll fix it. I'm like, I don't want to fix anything. Like, I want to, a great wine, if it's made well, right, almost from the day you pick the grapes through the whole process, even during fermentation, some of the awkward stages of a wine, you know it's a winner. You know it's a winner.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was seeking, because the things I was tasting down here were just, you know, there's a ton of bulk. Everybody was trying to get rid of their cousins, friends, best buddies tank of tequila. And when I met the Aceves team, we both knew that we were going to do something unique and different. It's been a great ride too.
You've accomplished it. Let me do this. Let's take a quick break on Open Bar and come back quickly and maybe wrap up a couple of things that you may want to cover. But folks, stay with us. I'm Mike Morales here for Tequila Aficionado Media, Tequila Aficionado Magazine. This is Steve Reynolds, of course, of Penta Tequila. And we'll be right back. We'll come back with part 2 of this really nice setting interview. Very quiet, because it's very noisy in tequila today. So
it really is.
Stick with us, folks.